too close or just honest. The dynamic that divided the internet. There are connections that invite applause, and then there are connections that invite questions. Freen and Becky's dynamic has always belonged to the second category. Not because it was loud, not because it was dramatic, but because it was quiet, consistent, and unmistakably human. And in a digital world that thrives on clear labels and instant explanations, that kind of closeness became unsettling. When people couldn't agree on what they were seeing, at first the reactions were subtle. Some viewers smiled and said, "They're comfortable with each other." Others paused and said, "That feels different." The divide didn't happen overnight. It grew slowly, the way unease often does, from repeated moments that didn't fit into neat categories. The way Freen leaned in when Becky spoke, even when she didn't need to. The way Becky instinctively mirrored Freen's movements, as if her body already knew the rhythm. The way silence between them felt full instead of awkward. For some it was warmth. For others it was too much. And that's when the internet began to split. The expectation of distance. In entertainment, especially between co-stars, there is an unspoken rule. Closeness must look intentional or temporary. Friendly is allowed. Playful is expected. But familiarity, real familiarity, makes people uncomfortable. Freen and Becky didn't perform closeness. They lived inside it. They didn't switch it on for cameras and off afterward. The energy remained the same in interviews, behind-the-scenes clips, and unscripted moments. That consistency became the problem. Because when closeness doesn't change, people stop believing it's an act. Too close is often code for uncomfortably real. The phrase "too close" says more about the observer than the connection itself. What does too close actually mean? Too attentive. Too aware of each other's emotions. Too gentle without explanation. When people called Freen and Becky too close, what they were really reacting to was emotional transparency, the kind that doesn't hide behind jokes or exaggerated behavior. They didn't overcorrect. They didn't pull away. They didn't sanitize their comfort to make it easier to consume. And that honesty disrupted expectations. The moments that fueled the division. It wasn't one big incident. It was accumulation. A hand resting a second longer than necessary. A look exchanged before answering a question. A laugh that softened into something quieter. Moments where neither of them seemed aware that these small gestures could be interpreted, analyzed, or weaponized. To supporters, these moments felt pure, unfiltered connection between two people who trusted each other. To critics, they felt inappropriate, misleading, or calculated. But the most telling detail: neither Freen nor Becky adjusted their behavior in response. Why honesty can look threatening. Honesty is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up in micro-reactions. How someone listens. How someone stands closer without thinking. How someone's guard drops without permission. These are not strategic moves. They are habits formed through safety. And safety, when witnessed from the outside, can feel intrusive. People are used to intimacy being earned through confession. What unsettled viewers was intimacy without explanation. The internet's need for clarity. The internet demands resolution. Are they friends? Are they acting? Is it real or isn't it? But Freen and Becky offered none of that. Their dynamic lived in the gray, a place the internet struggles to tolerate. Without confirmation, speculation grows. Without labels, narratives multiply. The division wasn't really about what they were. It was about the discomfort of not knowing. When professionalism doesn't require emotional distance. One of the loudest arguments was that their closeness crossed professional boundaries. But that assumption rests on a flawed idea. That professionalism requires emotional distance. In reality, some of the strongest working relationships are built on trust, comfort, and mutual understanding. Freen and Becky didn't lose focus. They didn't become careless. They didn't center their connection at the expense of their work. If anything, their ease made everything smoother. The problem wasn't lack of professionalism. It was the refusal to perform detachment. Why the divide never really healed. Time usually dulls controversy. This one lingered. Because the dynamic never changed. If it were fake, cracks would show. If it were forced, fatigue would appear. If it were calculated, it would evolve with public reaction. Instead, it stayed steady. That steadiness kept reopening the question. Was this closeness intentional, or simply unavoidable? What people were really arguing about? Beneath all the debates, one quiet truth remained. People weren't arguing about Freen and Becky. They were arguing about comfort with emotional honesty. Some people believe closeness must be defined to be valid. Others believe it can exist without permission. Freen and Becky stood firmly in the second space. Too close, or just unfiltered? The question itself reveals the tension. Too close implies excess. Just honest implies truth. The dynamic divided the internet because it refused to explain itself. And in doing so, exposed how rarely we see genuine ease between two people in public spaces. Not curated. Not exaggerated. Not defended. Just present. Conclusion. Why the division was inevitable. Freen and Becky didn't divide the internet by doing something extreme. They did it by doing something rare. They allowed their connection to exist without editing it for comfort. They trusted the bond more than the reaction. They chose authenticity over interpretation. And in a world that demands answers, their quiet refusal to explain became the loudest statement of all. Too close. Or just honest. The fact that people are still debating it may already be the answer.